Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Jim Coppinger with ZenTech Consultants, and this is our presentation on what's new in Review 2019. So we appreciate you guys taking the time to join us. Um, let's see. Before we get into it today, just as we go through, if you guys do have any thoughts, questions, or concerns, you can just go ahead and type those into either the chat or the question box, and I'll be happy to answer those in real time as we go. All right. So with that said, let's jump into this presentation, which should be a pretty short one today. So for starters, for those of you who have not worked with us before or not familiar with us, we are ZenTech Consultants, and we are a premier Bluebeam partner here in the US. We're also certified Microsoft Cloud Solutions. We work in CAD systems. Really, when it comes to the AEC and manufacturing space, whatever your technology needs are, we're here to help you guys. But we can definitely help you with Bluebeam training, support, licensing, upgrades, everything that you need. So hope you guys will hit our website and see all the good things we offer for you. All right. So the presentation today is really on the latest version, right? The Bluebeam 2019 release came out just about a month or so ago. And everybody's been kind of calling and asking, saying, what's new, what has been added, what are the changes. So we just wanted to touch base on the major changes that they put in place here in this new version, right? And kind of familiarize, you guys with them and how they work. All right, so there are three primary areas that have been upgraded in the 2019 release. The first one is scaling and collaboration tools. They've, I think, done a really nice job of taking what is one of the most important aspects of Bluebeam and working in PDFs, and they've kind of made it a little bit more user-friendly and intuitive, kind of help us avoid some of the pitfalls, so we'll talk about those. They've done a lot of work in 2019 on the back end. And a lot of it is in terms of speed and memory and graphics presentation. And really from your standpoint as an end user, I think what it really does for you is it gives you that improved screen rendering speed, all right, which may not seem like such a big deal, but when you're working with larger projects, it definitely can. And I'll show you guys an example of that and how that's working. And the last thing that they've done is they've incorporated a whole new process for company-wide distribution. Sorry, I'm getting a little bit of a head cold working here today, and my tongue doesn't want to catch up with me. Distribution and deployment tools, right? For putting together new installations, checking licensing, patches, updates, things of that nature. It's again, features that you could do in previous versions of Bluebeam, but you really needed some really good IT knowledge of the back end on building MSIs and so on in order to be able to distribute the same packages across multiple systems throughout your system. And this new set of tools, I think, does a nice job of simplifying it and making it something that most folks who have at least a little bit of IT savvy can really handle. So you don't need a fully developed IT guy to go in and do this for you. Someone who's a pretty decent computer user can actually handle the company-wide deployments if you need to. Okay, really important for small to medium-sized firms. All right, so those are the three areas we're really going to focus on here today. And with that said, it's demo time. All right, so we're going to start off here. I'm going to jump over to Bluebeam Revu 2019. All right, and I just have an example drawing open here. And the first thing that I want to talk about is the new scaling and calibration tools that they've incorporated into 2019. Now, calibration in general, and I know there are at least 4 or 5 people on this call today who have gone through Bluebeam training with me in the past, and I know that you guys have heard me talk a million times about the importance of scaling and calibration in PDF files and why it's so vitally important. So, what tends to happen is that CAD people, right, the designers, the architects, the engineers, they're really meticulous about printing paper drawings to scale because they know that people are going to be putting scales on them and measurements in the field, et cetera, and pricing. But when it comes to PDFs, because they think of it as, hey, we're on screen, you're zooming in and out, you can't really scale that anyway. You just kind of have to read the dimensions and stuff that we put on. Right, so they don't really bother too much when it comes to printing PDFs to make sure that they're the correct size or correct scale. And very often, what winds up happening is they just go in and they print, and if you're lucky, right, they remember to rotate your drawing to the proper landscape view, and they just say print. They're just printing a PDF. It's an electronic file. It doesn't have to be the size. Well, the problem is if you look up here, this is going to be an 8.5 by 11 print, right? Whereas the original document was a 34 by 22. I've just reduced the scale by over a third. Okay, so anything that I do here in Bluebeam in terms of quantity takeoff or measurements, right? And those are both very, very important aspects of Bluebeam. Most of us are using Bluebeam at some level out in the field to, get areas, to measure lengths and distances and order materials and verify things. And if your scale is off, everything that you do is off, right? So that's the basics and why calibration is so important. So in 2019, what they did is they, one of the problems, that has been kind of plaguing Bluebeam users for a number of years, is that people who weren't always as proficient as you wanted them to be would go in and they would take measurements and do scaling and areas and volumes off of their plans that had not been calibrated. And again, these were, executives, folks who don't really work in Bluebeam on a day-to-day, and they didn't know how to calibrate or even that was a thing. Right? So they'd go in and they'd start taking measurements and come back with values that were completely wrong. Right? They'd be ordering 30 board feet of lumber when you really needed 3,000, because they were measuring on something that was way too small or way too big. So in order to prevent that, the new calibration structure, right, is built in and it has been improved. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to go to the measurements table over on your side just because it's easier to see. And all of these tools are available as always up on your toolbar here in 2019. But you'll see that they did right off the bat, right, is that they've added a whole new set of tools to your calibration structure. Right? You can either use preset scales or custom scales, right? Which is nice. Right? In previous versions, you could really only kind of calibrate or you could manually type in scales. Here, if we go over to the preset option, right, you'll see that I actually have a whole drop-down list now of standard drawing scales. So if you know that your drawing was printed or it's set or it's scaled at a particular scale and you're comfortable in that, see you've got all your standard architectural scales, 32nd all the way up through, 1.5 inches. You got all your standard civil scales, 1 to 10, 1 to 50, and 100, right? And your standard ratio scales for, mechanical type work. Okay, so you've got all of those standard scales built in place now that you can just use a simple drop down to choose whatever the correct scale is for your document. And that's nice. The key there though is that your document does still have to be printed to scale. And just because it may say that this is a 1/32 of an inch document, and I go, okay, I choose 1/32 to a foot, that does not follow that it's to scale. If they printed it and it says 1/32, but they printed it on an 8.5 by 11 sheet, it is still not to scale. All right, so just be careful with your presets. I personally prefer the custom structure, right? And this uses the same calibration tools that we've always used in Bluebeam, which is that we can go in, right? And I can just go in and I can either type in a known value here and here, right? Or I can just calibrate by picking any two numbers, right? So I know that, from that corner of the building to that corner of the building, I know that that's 21 feet. Okay, so I can just come in here and see it brings up the custom setup here where I can go in and I can set it, right? That's the measured inches. When I picked from that corner to that corner, that's 1.87 and change inches in printed paper, okay, in real world size, right? And I'm setting that distance to 21 feet. And you see I can set separate units, right? Centimeters, meters, inches, feet, whatever I need. I can set in this pop-up the rounding, how accurate am I going to the nearest inch, the nearest half inch, 16th, 32nd, how accurate do I need to be? And I can also choose now what pages I want to set the scale on. So if I had a PDF that had 30 or so pages in it, I could easily go in and set this scale, right, that I just set here across all 30 floor plans. If this was a 30-story building, all at the same scale. All right, so in one shot like that, I can set the scale for all 30 pages within my single PDF, which is nice, right? It makes it real easy. So that's good, right? But not all that different. I'm just going to go ahead and apply the scale here. Not dramatically different from what we could do in 18 other than having the standard preset. Now, the big change that they've done here, and I think this is vitally important, right? Because it really can prevent a lot of trouble for your end users and a lot of conflict and potential legal actions down the road, right? The one thing that they've done here is that they've adjusted the calibration so that no drawing can be uncalibrated. In other words, if I go in here and I'm just going to go up and I'm going to create a new drawing, and I'm just going to create a standard 8.5 by 11 plan here. I don't even really care what it is. right? Just showing you that it is just a standard blank PDF. Right? And this is the kind of thing you would run into when you first open up a drawing or you create a new drawing and it's not calibrated. People would just come in and start measuring things, right? And that would cause all kinds of problems. So, someone could come into this blank drawing or this completely uncalibrated drawing, right? And they could say, hey, I want to get an area measurement. And they would just go and they would grab their area measurement tool and they would drag their area and it would give them a number of, 6 square feet. Well, that's not even close. That's probably more like, 16,000 square feet, but it wasn't calibrated. So, people would take that number and they would bid on that. Right now, if your drawing's not calibrated, as this brand new one is not, now when you go in, right, even if people don't realize that they need to calibrate, if they just go in and say, hey, I'm just going to use the area tool, right, I'm just going to go measure an area from here to here, right, what's that area? Instantly, Bluebeam pops up and says, hey, wait, stop. This drawing is not set to any scale. Right? And this is a simple change, it looks like, but really it's a fundamental shift in the way that we work, and I think it's one of the nicest changes that they've done. That now I get the ability here to either calibrate, okay, or input a dimension. And it's the same tools we were working with over here. I can choose to calibrate and pick 2 points, okay, or I can do input and I can choose from the drop down. So it's basically the same as going to the preset or the custom here, right? And here's the important thing. If I just go, well, I don't know what this is, I'm just going to cancel that. You see it deletes my area. It won't let me measure items in an uncalibrated or non-scaled document. And that's really important, okay? So again, I can just come back in here and I'm just gonna pick my area and I'll say, okay, you know what? I wanna input a scale, right? And now you see I can go in and I can choose my list. Say I know that this is a 1/4 inch scale drawing, right? And I'm gonna take it to the nearest 1/2 inch, right? And it's just this one page and I apply the scale and there it is. At a 1/4 inch scale, that's a 203 square feet that I'm working with there. Okay, so you see that, and that will work. I'm just going to kind of undo my way back here, right? And that works with whatever measurement tool you put in. General markup items, not a problem. If I just want to put in a rectangle, they're not to scale, they're just sketches. But when you get to any kind of a measurement item, if I want to go when I put in like a poly length and go from here to here to here, instantly it says, okay, you've got to tell me what the scale is before we can actively begin measuring, whether it's areas, volumes, counts, lengths, any measured item. You have to calibrate first. And again, I can go in and calibrate, right, and pick 2 points and go look from here to here. Right, that is, I don't know, let's say it's 15 feet. Apply the scale, and now you see it adjusts my lengths to match. Okay, so that's using the new pop-up calibration tools. I think they're really, really useful and can save you a lot of grief and potential problems down the road. Okay, all right. So the next thing that I wanted to talk to you about, and it may seem, I'm just going to close out this closed window here. Like I said, it may seem like it's a pretty simple setup, right? And it really comes down to screen rendering, okay? And what I'm going to do here, right, is I'm going to kind of split my screen. I have both 2018, so I have 2018 running over here on the left, and I have 2019 running over here on the right. All right, so I have both versions of Bluebeam running side by side on my screen, showing the same drawing. So what Bluebeam did is they made a fundamental change to the back end memory and display formatting, right, that runs Bluebeam, which is really important for future updates, right? It's going to allow them to do completely different processes at much faster rates of speed. So they really kind of, it's kind of like replacing the engine in your car. It may not look like you did much from the outside, but you really completely changed the entire interior. And that's kind of what they've done in 2019. So you guys will see it, right, in what they call the Hardware Accelerated Rendering Engine, or HARE, H-A-R-E. Right? And what they've done is, one of the things that you ran into, particularly on larger drawings and large drawing sets in 2018, which is over here on the left, is that a lot of times as you went in and you zoomed in on things, you see how you got like the very blocky, and you see how long it took to kind of review and reprocess that, right? And even as you zoomed out, you see how it takes 3 or 4 seconds to kind of regenerate and redraw those. And the more documents that you had in your PDF set and the more detail that there was in these drawings, right? The harder and the longer you see how long you have to wait for that to kind of reprocess, right? If you did like zoom all the way out, there's like a 3 or 4 second delay. It doesn't seem that dramatic, but when you're going through hundreds, possibly even thousands of documents in the course of a day or a couple of days, that adds up, okay? All right, it's also just very, very frustrating. Now, taking that same thing, right, when I come over here to 2019 and I go in and I zoom in, you see it's much faster and how quickly it zooms in. My pans are much smoother, right, versus, you know, when I go over here and zoom into that same area, I gotta wait and my pans can stick and then have to regen, right? I have a much smoother, see my full zoom all the way out on these, right? Works that quickly versus here, 1, 2, 3, 4, okay? So you see it's a 1 second versus a 4 second, and that just gets worse. So at the end of the day, the hair, this hardware accelerated rendering engine, all of your drawings and your documents, they display much more smoothly, they pan and zoom more smoothly, and they regenerate up to 6 times as fast as they did in the 2018 release. All right, so like I said, it's a back-end change, but it really does have a very dramatic impact on you on a day-to-day setting. Now, the thing to understand with that is that most modern computers will work with the hardware rendering engine with no problem. But just to show you guys, if you should have, and I'm just going to go back in here to the full 2019 page. If you guys do have any issues, or if you're finding that your displays are freezing or hanging up, you have issues, you can always go in, you can modify that. If you go into the review, right, and just go to your preferences, right, and if you just go down to the advanced tab, and you see here you've got the 2D and 3D rendering tabs, and you see that both of these by default are set to hardware. That's the new hardware rendering engine, right? If you find that it's not working or it's crashing or it's causing you problems, you can revert back to the older software processing, right, where the software is handling it. But really, you know, anything that's got a DirectX 11 video card, which is pretty common, should be able to handle the hardware acceleration with no problem at all. So at the very least, I suggest you guys try it, leave it for a week or so, and see if it's helping you. It should help most everybody. Okay, so that's how you can work with that. Right. So the last thing then that I want to talk about is dealing with your review configuration editor. Okay, and that's where we're talking about the ability to be able to build and customize Bluebeam, right, for your whole company. That means setting up its licensing, its distribution, its profiles, toolboxes, etc., right, and distribute that throughout your company. Now that can all be done manually, right? You've always been able to do that. You can set up your own profiles and save them to a network, and that works just fine. But one of the things that was always very much a back-end control set, which is the ability to build an MSI or a distribution file and be able to send that MSI and have that automatically written when people log onto their machines. It would automatically install Bluebeam for new users, etc. You can make that part of a ghost or a standard default login profile. And that took a lot of time and effort, and it really required a lot of coding and XML interfaces, and it was a high-end IT function, and 99% of us never touched it because it just wasn't worth the headache. Well, what they've done is they've integrated into Bluebeam 2019. And let me be clear about this when I say integrated. It's a separate program. It's free. It's part of your license. You can just go to the Bluebeam website, okay, and you can download it from as you know. There, you go to support.bluebeam.com and go under Enterprise Installation, and you'll see, right, the Bluebeam Revu configuration editor. Okay, it's a separate program. You can just download it and run it. Okay, but the great thing is that rather than having all of those back-end coding things, everything here has been brought into a very simple wizard that pretty much anybody can follow through. So again, if you want to build a new deployment package, a standard MSI that, you know, when people double click on it, or if, like I said, you tie it to a batch routine, it will automatically install Bluebeam on new systems, right? You can just go in and you can build your new deployment. And you see it's just going to take you step by step through a wizard on building an MSI. All right, the first thing it's going to ask you to do is to choose your MSI package, and I already have one here. All right, so you can go get an MSI package. You can go in and set what folder you want it to go to, right, on your system. All right, so if you want to go into your local machine, right, and I'll just set this for, I'll just set it under C temp for right now, okay, and I want to set that, okay. If I've already done a previous deployment, right, I can copy that, right, and then I just work my way through. Now I'd put in my company serial number and product key, right, or I can say, hey, I'm going to use the trial version. Maybe you want to install the trial version, right? Maybe you're saying, hey, should we go to 2019? Let's install it on 30 machines and give everybody a chance to test it for 30 days, and they can, right? And then you just follow through, right? Now here's where you start to get into more detail, right, as to whether or not do we make Bluebeam the default PDF view, or do we, delay authorization, right? Are they allowed to do in-app updates? Okay, is the welcome page on and on? Do they put a desktop shortcut? Okay, what language are we using, right? Your preferences path. You can set all, the configuration, all the different structures, okay, that you can work with here. You can leave the defaults, you can change those, okay, right? These are standard Bluebeam features that you can actively disable on other user station. So if you're the administrator, you don't want anybody else to do administrative work, you can turn that off. Are they allowed to use signatures, text editing? You can make different deployments for different levels of users. Okay, so if you go in and say, look, you know what, I'm only going to put digital signatures for people who are, engineers or architects. Everybody else, I'm going to have a separate deployment that doesn't even install digital signatures for them. Okay, it's simplifying and eliminating, giving people only the things that they need. Okay, all right, and then last again, right, which plugins do you want this to work with? Right, you see all the different plugins that Bluebeam will tie into, so you can build that in terms of the deployments. Okay, and that's for new. I'm just going previous back to the beginning here. That's for new deployment. Right. The other thing that's really nice here is that you also have the ability to create patch deployments. Right, so you can actually go in here, and instead of an MSI, it builds an MSP. Okay, and an MSP file, it updates. So when there are new releases of Bluebeam or new tools, or you got fixes done, right? It's the next release, right? It goes to 2019 version 2 or 3. You can actually automatically build these MSPs that can then be tied to a batch routine. So as people boot up, they log in, it automatically runs the MSP and updates and patches with the latest version. Okay. Other than that, the wizard works exactly as the MSI does. You can actually go in and you can start to build your own deployment extensions here, right? So that means that you can go in and you can add and create your own profiles, right? So you can actually go in, and when you build standard Bluebeam BPX profiles, you can tell Bluebeam which profiles you want to add in, so that again, if you're building, a distribution set for managers, right? You can go in and tie in and build in all of your company's custom profiles for standard markup tools and notes. And if you're building a different one for your estimating staff, you can have a completely different set of measurement tools and quantity takeoff tools, and you can tie those profiles and toolboxes and line types all here as part of the deployment, so that all estimators get the same install. Okay, that's the kind of thing that you can do here. Okay, you can even go in here and you can go in and verify licensing through this. So if you want to go in and click on the check license, it'll actually bring you up to the Bluebeam online licensing page. Right, and you can just go ahead and put in your either your serial number or your product number, right, and it'll come back and it'll give you a list of all your licenses that are under that. So if you have a single serial number for 50 licenses, it'll come back and it'll tell you which computers those 50 seats are tied onto. So you can kind of do a little bit of self-maintenance that way in order to make sure that you got all the information you need. So that's the Bluebeam Revu configuration editor. Really, really nice little tool, right? And it can definitely make your life a little bit easier. And with that said, I think that kind of covers the big items that I wanted to talk about in 2019. And I want to thank you guys for joining us today. Hope you got some good information. And I just want to point out to you guys, right, if you do have any questions, you can reach out to me at training@zentechconsultants.net, or you can reach out to sales@zentechconsultants.net if you guys are looking to upgrade or purchase additional seats of Revu 2019, or if you need to get your people trained. Or again, we also do customization for our clients all the time in terms of Bluebeam tools and profiles and any kind of specific features, tools, items that you might need in order to make Bluebeam work the way that you guys need it to work. We're here for you. Other than that, thank you guys for joining us today. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Bye-bye.